Jeez, the starting. Mm-mm-mm. Oh, awesome. It started. Cool. Okay, so hey everyone, this is Marnell Sample here. And today I thought I would bring you a little bit more on a topic I covered maybe about a week and a half ago in another stream. It's entitled Why Learning to Sing is So Hard. And in that, I brought up some really important issues. It's kind of a rant off the top of my head, but now I have another rant off the top of my head that's more of a continuation along the lines of those ideas. So, in that particular video, if you haven't seen it already, I gave an analogy of how learning to sing is like putting together this big 5,000 piece puzzle. Okay. But what I would like to go into now is another really big factor that I think is affecting a lot of singers now that makes it much, much, much harder to learn singing than it has ever been before. And that is something that you guys probably do not expect at all. And that is the internet. Okay? You're probably going, what? Why? You're like, the internet's making it easier to learn to sing. I have like so much available to me now. And, I can get access to this person and that person. And that is precisely the thing that makes it harder for you to learn. Let me explain. So, keeping in mind that the internet as we know it today has only really been around approximately 20 years or so, and YouTube specifically has only really been around since like I want to say maybe 2005-ish, so maybe for 13 years. So a lot of this stuff is relatively new when it comes to singing. So prior to the internet, when a person wanted to learn to sing, they only had a few options available to them. They had their local coaches who were there in their area, and maybe if they knew a few singers that could sing well, they might ask them for advice. But aside from that, that was it. So you go to your coach for a lesson, and they give you your sets of exercises or whatever that you need to work on and practice. And you went home and you practiced them. And then if you had questions, you came back to the coach again next week and you ask questions, and then they give you clarification. And then you go over the exercises, you get a new set of exercises, and it continues so on and so forth like that. But now this is how things have changed now. Now, when people go to take voice lessons, this is what they do. They have a lesson. Their coach gives them some information, some new ideas to work on, some new concepts to implement. And then the first thing you do when you get home is you start going onto YouTube and you start going onto search engines looking up more information on those topics. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the way I see most singers going about it, it actually works against you in a very major way, and you don't even realize it. Because you see now, you see that you look up more information. Let's say your teacher mentions this concept of nasal resonance. Okay, fine. You're like, oh, what is that? Oh, I want to understand more about this. So instead of asking your coach more of those questions and trying to get more clarification from your coach, you go onto YouTube and you type in nasal resonance, or how to find nasal resonance, or how to sing with nasal resonance, and you come across one person's video, and you start looking at that, and they end up saying something a little bit different than your coach, and then you start going, huh? And then you look up another video on nasal resonance, and then you go, wait a minute, this next person's saying something different. I still don't get it. And then you look up the next video, and the next video, and the next video, and then you look at this article online, and that article online, and then you realize everybody's saying something different or describing it in a different way, and then you just get even more lost than you started out with. And that works against you, because then you end up not practicing anything. You get so bound up in the mental ideas of, well, what is this and what is that, that you don't actually sit down and practice. You don't sit down and put in the time to at least make the attempt to understand what your teacher was saying to you. That is the disadvantage that all of you are at today, is that you have so much information available to you, and not all of it is good information. Not all of it is correct information. Not all of it can be easily applied to you, but you don't know that, and you still try to apply it anyway, and then you just end up getting lost. So when you have a professional telling you, hey, this is what it is, or this is what you need to work on, they have a vision in mind for you of how to get you from point A to point B. And if I go back to my analogy of the puzzle that I had the last time, you have this big 5,000 piece puzzle that you're putting together. As soon as you open up that box and you start taking out the pieces, how do you put it together? Well, there is no one way to start putting it together. Everyone that comes across it is going to have a different idea of how to go about completing that puzzle, especially when that puzzle is in its early stages. Now, once you get further along the road and more of the pieces start falling into place and you can see more of the major chunks and it's just like little small pieces that are missing, then yeah, most people are going to end up completing that the same way. But a puzzle that's bare bones, nothing, you can start anywhere and each person is going to see a different route for how to complete that puzzle. And the same is true of a voice teacher. Every voice teacher, regardless of what your voice problems are, they're going to see a different way of getting you from point A to point B. So it's very important that if you're in training with a teacher or trying to follow a teacher's advice, that you at least give that teacher's advice a chance. And by a chance, I mean you sit and work with what they have to say and only what they have to say for a good 6 to 8 weeks. You give it a chance, you practice seriously, you practice like you actually put in the time, not just sitting and thinking about it mentally as, oh yeah, they said this in the lesson. That sounds like a really interesting idea. Okay, but you haven't actually sat down and actually practiced it. No, they give you an idea, you sit and practice it, and you give it some time, at least several weeks to try to embed into your mind and give it a chance to see if it's actually going to have an effect on your voice. With some vocal exercises, you start to see some hints of an effect in the early stages, but you really have to stick with it for at least a good few weeks before you really start to see the benefits of it, because your voice begins to transform in gradual ways that you might not even be aware of over time as you continue to do the exercises. So you have to stick with that plan. But if you're not sticking with that plan and you're trying to insert everybody else's opinion into that plan, then you've got a problem. So one of the big things I notice nowadays when it comes to people looking up vocal information online is there are a lot of people now who are giving advice on singing who are not qualified to give advice on singing, specifically when it comes to singers who are trying to learn that you just kind of new to the whole thing. You kind of don't know what's going on and you're trying to gain your bearings. Many of those people are not qualified to give advice to people in that situation. So I find those people tend to come in a few different categories. You have one set of people that's more along the lines of they literally have no clue what they're talking about. They can't even sing. They don't have much musical ability to speak of, but they can write really, really, really well. And they can write in a very convincing kind of way. And so normally what happens with that type of person is they've read maybe a book on singing just as like kind of a theoretical idea. And they're like, okay, this is all it is. End of the story. Okay, I understand this. Next. And so they encounter other singers who are trying to learn and they just tell you, oh, this is all it is. You just need to get your head voice together. You just need to get that 1, 2, 3, bam, you're done. That's all it is. It's not that hard. It shouldn't take that long, blah, 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 blah. But normally with this type of person, you'll see them. They may be commenting on videos on YouTube. They may be uploading videos to YouTube. You may see them on Reddit or on vocal forums or things like this. But normally when you hear them actually sing, if you ever hear them sing, you realize that they have not the slightest clue what they're talking about when it comes to music. So that's one type of person that you may be taking advice from and not even realize it. The next type of person is you have people who can sing really, really, really well. That they have a good understanding of music and how to use their own voice, but they can't explain anything for the life of them how to get you to do it. That's actually the category a lot of people fall into. Being a teacher is a very special thing. It's a very special skill set that's very different from being a performer. Being a performer and being a teacher are two different things. But what tends to happen in a lot of cases is these performers have a pretty good intuitive sense, so they can just get kind of an exposure to an idea and start picking up things, and they don't realize that everybody else doesn't pick it up quite that same way without a whole lot of extra guidance. And or they may have a good understanding of their voice, but it's a very unique understanding to them. Like they just understand their voices in such a way that it makes perfect sense in their mind. They try to explain it to you and you go like, what? Like, I don't know how to do that. What in the world is that thing? Like, I don't even know how to relate to that. So a lot of these singers, these good singers, are just totally oblivious to all of this, but they're trying to teach other people. You know, no harm, and they're not. They don't mean any harm by it. They want to see other singers do well, and they want to help you, but they don't realize that how far off from you are from where they are, and how big of a journey you have ahead of you to get from point A to point B. So the advice that they end up giving you, while well intentioned, can often not produce the results that you're looking for. So that's another set of advice that you often come across on the internet these days. Then you have a third set, which are people who are actually voice teachers. But in that case, with people who are voice teachers, what you have is that there's sometimes, or in a lot of cases, people who are not well equipped to teach the technical aspects of singing. These might be people who are very good at teaching you the musical aspects in terms of like more of a vocal coach, in terms of, are you singing in tune? Are you keeping up with the rhythm of the song? What is the mood that this song is supposed to be conveying? What are some of the appropriate vocal colors that you should be using for this song? Things of that nature. You have a lot of people who are really, really good at that. But when it comes to the actual technical things of a voice, especially if you have a person who's starting from ground zero, and I mean someone who can't match pitch, who has no rhythm to speak of, someone who on top of those two things has no coordination in their voice, that they have no low notes, no high notes, the ability to take someone like that and actually turn them into a singer, very few people have that ability. And one second, sorry about that, the stream froze for a second. I was saying very few people have the ability to take a singer who started out from nothing, from zero, and to take them into being a good singer. So someone who can't match pitch, someone who can't sing in tune, someone who can't hold a rhythm to save their lives, someone who has no development of their voice, they can't sing high, they can't sing low. How to take someone like that and turn them into something that people enjoy listening to. That's a very rare, you very rarely come across someone like that. You will normally find teachers that can take someone who already have a decent level of development, but just maybe have some rough edges here and there that just need to be ironed out. You have a lot of people who are good with those types of singers, but when you're just really starting from nothing, that's intense. And so, but again, you still have people trying to advise you on all these matters when they don't really have the tools to be able to deal with all of these types of singers, all of these types of people. And then on top of that, you do have people who are teaching, but to be a teacher, you have a lot of people that say they're a teacher, but to really be a teacher, you need to have trained under someone. And when I say trained under someone, I mean not just taking one-on-one lessons for yourself, but actually watching them teach other people, watching them teach tons of people, lots and lots and lots of people for months and years. It's basically an apprenticeship, because there's a lot more to sing or to teaching singing than what you can find in a book. A whole lot more. That's a whole thing unto itself. So that ideally, if that person has sat under a good teacher and watched them for a while, that better equips them for how to teach, because this is where it gets tricky when you starting to take advice online. On the one hand, you may have an idea that from a scientific standpoint is 100% accurate and correct. Something like, okay, well, as you're going higher into your range, the thyroarytenoid activity is supposed to lessen. It decreases and your vocal cords thin out, and that's what lets you get into your mix or your high range or whatever like that. You may have a statement like that that is scientifically accurate, but you, as a singer who are learning, you can't think of it that way, because in a lot of cases, you thinking of it that way does not lead to the result that you are looking for. And that's the difference between having knowledge and actually being a teacher. Because, like, for instance, when I was with my teacher, although she was, as I was watching her teach, tons and tons of different people for months at a time, every single day I would go in like 3 days a week, watch her teach anywhere from 5 to 8 hours a day, and teaching, people doing everything. One person, she's teaching the same technique to everyone, but to one person, she might tell them, pull chest up to this note. Now, is she actually teaching them to pull chest? No, but that's what that person needs to think in their mind to get from point A to point B. Whereas the next person that comes along, she might tell them, hey, stop pulling so much chest into this note. You need to mix this note more. And you may say, well, that's two different sets of instructions. Yes, it is. It's intended for two different people, because you see what that person is thinking and how you have to tinker into their mind to get them to do the correct action. And that's the art of teaching that many people that are leaving comments on videos and on message boards and things of that nature, they're not really attuned to. So you have all of that coming into play, not realizing you're trying to take in information from all of these places, and that's what's getting you confused. So if I could offer one piece of advice to all the singers out there, it would be to stop looking up so much information. Get one idea at a time, follow one teacher at a time. Give that person a shot, an honest shot, where you actually sit down and practice for at least a good 6 to 8 weeks before you just say, oh, I'm just going to write this off. This doesn't work. This method is no good, or whatever. I'm seeing a lot of times people nowadays, they just try something once and they say, oh, this doesn't work. That's not how you really learn anything in life. It takes time of sitting down and practicing and giving it an attempt for it to work. So there's that issue. And then there's another issue that I'm seeing now commonly, which is that a lot of people's ears these days lack development in terms of an understanding of music. So not only are you dealing with the technical issues that people are running into, you're also dealing with the just basic music principles that people are not familiar with. So to put this into perspective for you, if you look at the charts now of songs that are in the top 40, like the top 40 songs that are out right now, and compare them to the top 40 songs that were out in the 80s, number one, the songs in the 80s generally had more musical complexity. Number two, there was also more musical variety. And number three, the singers in general had a better command and understanding of their voices. Like, for instance, if you watch almost any of the award shows that were on in the 80s, whether it's the Grammys or the AMAs or whatever, and you just look at all the performances that were on there, as a whole, most of them were good. Now you look at the Grammys, and you get some performances that are like kind of questionable when it comes to just basic musicianship and control of the voice. I'm not talking so much about the staging and the dancing and all that stuff. That respect, things have gotten better. But when it comes to basic musicianship, like singing in tune, singing to the rhythm, to the beat, actually being able to hold your notes and not running away from them, maybe being able to control your voice. When it comes to just basic fundamental things like that, things have started going down quite a bit since that time period. So like, I'll just give you a basic example here. I just looked up a list of some of the top songs at the end of 1983. You have Every Breath You Take by The Police. You have Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. You have Beat It by Michael Jackson. You have Total Eclipse of the Heart. You have Man Eater by Hall & Oates. You have Baby Come to Me by Patty Austin and James Ingram. You have what else do you have here? You have Sergio Mendes, Never Gonna Let You Go. You have Africa by Toto. You have a couple of Prince songs. You have Up Where We Belong by Joe Cocker. You have a couple of Lionel Richie songs. You have a Marvin Gaye song, Phil Collins, Separate Ways by Journey, another Hall & Oates song. You have another Prince song. You have Billy Joel, they had a couple of songs out there. And yeah, Stevie Nicks, you had another Lionel Richie song. And I mean, I could just go on, but that's what you had out then. And those people, number one, had a stronger understanding of music because a lot of them tended to be musicians themselves. So they understood not just musicians, but they were trained musicians. So they had to sit and study music for a while and understand, how does this work? How do chords typically tend to flow around? And what are alternate paths that I can take for these chords? How can I play with the rhythm some? How can I play with this and play with these other musical ideas, but still coming from that foundation, that basic foundation of this is how music works? They had that understanding and also a basic understanding of what it means to sing. And, but we don't have that now. So if all you're listening to now is top 40 music, your ear is underdeveloped. You're not hearing these types of chord progressions anymore. You're not hearing the possibilities for how chords can move. You're not hearing different types of rhythms as much as you could have been. You're missing so much musical information. And so people learning to sing nowadays, you have a long ways to go to get to where you want to be. It's not impossible, but it takes some time and it takes some attention and some extra dedication, more than what it did 20 years ago, more than what it did 30 years ago. So give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I have any questions here on this topic. Hi, Reese. Hi, Owen. Yes, more reading and listening than doing. Doing is the most important part. Yes, anytime you get an idea, you have to sit and actually try to apply it. Like, even if it's a new musical concept, okay, it's fine to have it as an idea in your head, but you got to sit down and do it. Whether it's a new scale that you just learned, a new type of chord, or whatever, you got to sit down with it and sit with it for some time and actually do it until it gets into your head. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, that you're from Turkey. Ege, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. I remember you from the last live stream. Thank you for joining. Let's see. Owen says, doing the right practice, not just any practice. Yes, that's correct. Jacob, the vocal damage is what you're afraid of. Okay, that's a very fair point. And I would like to address that. I know a lot of people are afraid of vocal damage. I was afraid of vocal damage when I first started. And to that point, I want to say you just need to have some common sense when it comes to singing, in the sense that you have to pay attention to the signals that your body is giving you. So if you know realistically that you're giving your current capabilities right now, all you can sing up to with any type of consistency and freedom is D above middle C. So a D4, you have no business trying to sit on a C5 and trying to exercise up to a C5. It's just totally out of your reach. What's realistic is, okay, if all I can handle right now is a D4, maybe I'll try E flat, maybe I'll try E, and then I wait until those notes get consistent and comfortable for me, and then maybe I'll try going for the F. But instead, I see people who are stuck at D, and then they're complaining about a high C, but I'm like, you can't even do a D above middle C consistently, so how do you expect you're going to do a high C? That's just nonsensical. But that's what leads to voice problems. You're not listening to your body. You're not thinking logically about, realistically about how to get from point A to point B. So that's one thing. The other thing is pay attention to how your voice feels after each practice session. If you have a practice session and you get hoarse afterwards, that tells you did something wrong. If you have another practice session, you do the same thing and you get hoarse again, that tells you you're doing something wrong. That means you need to investigate what it is that you're doing that's making you lose your voice. Whether it's one particular type of exercise that you're trying to do, or some type of range that you're trying to get into, or some type of volume level that you're trying to do, or some type of texture or effect or whatever it is, you need to stop and figure out, well, what did I just do that screwed up my voice? And if you're not taking the time to do that as a singer, that is your responsibility. That is something that every singer has to go through to some degree. Like, you have to go through some of that to learn, okay, this is what works for my voice. This doesn't work for my voice. This works for my voice. That doesn't work for my voice. You do have to go through some of that, and you shouldn't be afraid of that. But to keep doing that day after day, after day, after day, after day, for weeks and months on end, then you're going to get vocal damage. So it's not as fast and as extreme as what you're thinking, but it can still happen. But you just have to be very logical about it when you go look into that. Let's see. Owen says, I think what he's saying is very applicable to any skill too, and maybe think again about a lot of things I'm learning. Okay. Hey, Wadner, good to see you here. I never listen to people who can't sing. That's backwards if you ask me. Well, Wadner, this is the thing. A lot of people online these days are new to singing. And like I said, if they see someone who can write in a very convincing and authoritative way, they just blindly accept what that person says because they're like, oh, it just looks like they know what they're talking about. You get a lot of people like that who are salesmen, and not necessarily in the singing field, but just like in life in general, that they can talk you into anything. They can have zero clue about about that topic, but they can deliver it in such a convincing way that you go, oh wow, I think you're right. I think I need to try that. I think I need to try what you just said. If you're not discerning, you will get sucked into that, and that's what's happening to a lot of people these days. Okay, so let's see what this next question is. I spent years trying to make the transition from chest voice to falsetto seamless, but now I'm struggling to sing with my full voice between D4 and G4. Any advice, practice? Number one, that transition between your chest voice and your falsetto will always be there. It's always going to be there. That's how it's supposed to be. What you're looking for is you have to learn to control your chest voice more. That's what you're looking for, is how to control the different, let's call it layers of your chest voice. Your chest voice is not this little narrow thing that people think of that only exists in one part of your range. Your chest voice has this many possibilities, and I'm probably getting out of the camera. It's huge. And most people never spend the time really exploring all of what it can do, really exploring all of the dynamic levels that you can find in it, from loud to soft. You never spend enough time exploring how high you can actually take it. You don't spend time really trying to learn how to control it, how to tune your vowels better. So that's what I would say. You just need to spend more time exploring your full voice and explore it slowly. Take it one step at a time, one day at a time. Conquer it one note at a time. So if all you can do right now is the D, then gradually work your way up to the E flat, and gradually work your way up to the E. That's exactly how it happened for me. Like when I first started, I couldn't sing in full voice above C#4. That was the highest I can go in full voice. Excuse me. And I built it one note at a time. I gradually learned how to do a D. And then I got kind of stable on that. And then I got to the D sharp, got stable there, then the E, and so on and so forth. So it's a process, and it does take time. Hi, Hari. Thank you for visiting. Wadner says, I noticed that some singers today sing out of tune and not know it. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say like the overall baseline level of musicianship that you see in top 40 today versus top 40 in the 80s. It's just not even comparable. You have so many singers that sing out of tune now that when you listen to them live, I'm talking about live, not just studio stuff, but live performances, they can't sing in tune live. Sometimes they're out of they're off rhythm. They don't know how to control their voices. And this is not to knock any of them. It's just that they didn't take enough time to really learn how to use their voices and learn good basic musicianship skills. So let's see. Drew, he's been dropping some truth. Thank you. Uh, Thanks, Q. Okay, I have so many musical concepts. Let's see. How do you change from metal music to R&B? That's a good question. Okay, I would start this way. Number one, learn how to sing with a clean tone. If you can't sing with a clean tone, then you're going to struggle. Number two, dynamics. Although dynamics exists within metal music, if you listen to good metal singers, in a lot of cases they had a blues slash R&B background, and that helps a lot with basic musicianship. Like I said, that's just a simple concept of music. That's a part of phrasing is dynamics, loud, soft, medium volume, and everything in between. That's just basic music. Dynamics get exploited a whole lot more in R&B music than I would say something like metal. So you're going to have to start listening more acutely to these dynamics and also the changes in vocal color that occur that accompany each of these different dynamic levels, because a loud note has one kind of color, a soft note has a different kind of color. So for instance, if I go something like I'll just take one note. If I go and I do this at a very soft volume, this is just a very soft volume. This has one color. Now I go a little bit louder. You can hear the vocal color changes a little bit. So dynamics and color, they go hand in hand. I don't think of it so much in terms of color. I'm aware that the color changes as dynamics change, but I look at it first and foremost as just simply singing with dynamics. A loud note, if I go, it's the same note, but now it's a different color in the voice. It has more of this metallic bite. So just simply by changing dynamics correctly, you're going to get changes in color in the voice. And that's a basic principle for all of music. This is true of any instrument. If you take any instrument, whether it's piano, whether it's sax, whether it's trumpet, whether it's violin, whether it's guitar, whether it's whatever, you take one note, you play it softly, it has one color. You play it loudly, it has another color. You play it at an in-between volume, it has another color. You take a high pitch, that has one color. You take a low pitch, that has another color. So when you start looking at it in terms of basic music concepts of pitch, rhythm, and intensity, or the dynamic level, the how loud or soft it is. If you look at those three basic things, that gives you most of what you need to be able to sing really any style of music, because music is just some different combination of all of that. So in addition to looking at those things, I would just say listen to a lot of R&B music, and that will get you where you want to be. Okay, so Jatavion says, do you know why sometimes I can reach high notes without being squeaky? I don't really know the answer to that, because there could be many things. That's just something that probably comes with a lack of experience, a lack of development in the voice, where if you can't do it consistently, that means that you don't have a clear approach in your mind to those high notes that will get you there every single time in the same way. So you might need a different kind of explanation of how you're thinking about the high notes or how you're trying to approach them. More than likely, it's how you're trying to approach it. And it's probably due to how you're approaching your middle notes and your lower notes. But okay, let's see. Anzor says, I had a classically trained teacher, opera masters, yada, 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 tell me that if your chest raise up when you inhale, you're not breathing properly. I think she's wrong. What's your take on that? Okay. Generally speaking, your chest shouldn't raise up like that when you're breathing, when you're inhaling. Why? Because what happens? I'll show you. Look, neck muscles here, tensing. That's what tends to happen when you breathe with your chest going up. when we inhale, we're trying to get this whole area of our body up here to open up and relax as much as possible. We're not trying to create new tensions in this area of the body. Okay? Now, with that said, do you see singers sometimes going like this when they're getting ready for a phrase? Yes. But they also do something else after it, right after it, that's really important. They go, and then they relax out of that tension as they get ready to prepare for the phrase. So they don't go, and then stay like this for the whole phrase. They don't do that. They go, and then let it relax. So they're not holding on to that tension. Now, ideally, you still don't even really want to do that, but that's okay to do. What ideally happens is you get this side expansion in your body. So like your sides along in here will expand, your back will expand, but from here, this expands forwards. It's kind of a hard concept to get, and I only work on it with people when they get more advanced. Like, it's not something you really need to worry about for now. But if you feel that happening, like a forwards kind of expansion in the chest, like everything's kind of opening up this way rather than opening up this way, then that's a good thing to have. Wagner says, why some people are born with a great voice with no training while others can't sing at all and have to learn it? I'll give you a perfect example of why that is. My little sister is really interesting. When she was 4 years old, I was doing something one day. I was playing something on the keyboard and I was like kind of singing something. I know what it was. I was trying to get my brothers to sing something. It was this pattern or whatever, and they were struggling with it. Like, they were really struggling with it. And my little sister walks into the room. She's like, oh, let me try. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And she does it, and she's like singing every single note perfectly in tune. And then I'm like trying to play patterns intentionally to confuse her. And she's just like nailing every single note. And I'm looking at her like, how are you doing that? Like, where you come from? What? I don't like you. You're doing something that the rest of us, are struggling to do, because my brothers who are way older than her, none of them could do it. Here she is. She's not even thinking twice about it. She's like, oh yeah, ah. And then I play another, and she's just like all over the place. And I'm like, okay. But then she could also do this. Like, if I was like imitating someone's accent or something like that, she could do that too. So she had a sensitivity in her ear as well as a lack of inhibition. Like, she didn't have these judgments worrying about, oh, well, what's somebody going to think if I sing this note? And what if I sing the wrong note? And oh my goodness, what's going to happen? She didn't have any of that running around in her head. She was just like, oh, this is fun. They look like they're playing a game over there. I want to play too. Let me try. And then if they can't do it the first time, then they try it again and then they get it. Same thing happened with my little cousin. When he was 5 years old, one day I was at the piano and I was doing lip bubbles, just some vocal exercises on lip bubbles. And he goes, how do you do that? He's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just going, I'm just doing like that. And then he's like, and then he tried it and he was like, I can't do it. And I was like, yes, you can. And then he stopped. He shut up for a second and then he tried it again. And then he tried it a third time. The third time, he got it. I didn't tell him anything. I didn't have to give him an ounce of instruction. He just sat there and watched me and listened. He watched and he listened. He watched, listen, imitate. Watch, listen, imitate. And then he was doing lip bubbles all up and down the scale. I never had to teach him how to do that. He just watched me. That's all. So you have some people who never divorce themselves from that ability. They can see something and they know how to shut up long enough and pay attention long enough to actually get it. If they just watch it, that's how I am with a lot of things. Like, if you try to explain something to me, I'm like, it can just like go over my head and I'm like, what are you doing? I don't get it. But if you do it in front of me and I get a chance to watch you, I just sit and I look and I look and I look and I go, okay, I've got it now. Just like the little kids do. So that's why some people get it naturally and others don't. It also has something to do with, like I said, once again, the music that you have been exposed to. So when I was little, Um, the music that I was exposed to when I was in the car with my mom was Take Six. Whenever we were in the car going anywhere, she either had Take Six on in the car or the Clark Sisters. It was one of those two. We normally didn't listen to other stuff like on the radio and things of that nature in the car. If you've never listened to Take Six, they are this all male a cappella group. It's six guys in the group, and they have some crazy harmonies and jazz harmonies going on, and they do all these sound effects with their voices. In their first two albums, the whole thing with the albums were it was all done with their voices. There were no instruments. So they were imitating the sound of instruments with their voices. They are like one of the best male a cappella groups out there, period. Like there's very few people that come to the level of proficiency that Take Six does. So what did that do? That primed my ear for a lot of the stuff that I was going to hear later on because I'm hearing these patterns. I'm hearing, oh, this is what voices can do. Oh, they go high like this and they go like low like this and they have this color and that color. And you have that singer there. They have one sound. This other singer has another sound. So when you get exposed to stuff like that, you absorb it. And this is why I'm saying you need to be exposed to good singers, not just mediocre singers, but very, very, very good singers. Very good singers. It's not good enough to be, oh, I just like this style. You can like a song, that is fine. It's perfectly fine to like whatever music you like. But if you want to learn to sing, you have to set the bar very high and expose yourself to people who are the best of the best. Okay, so what is this? Why is it I can get to a D5 without strain, but as it starts to go higher, I start straining? Any way to get through this roadblock? When you get to a D5, there is a certain set of vowel modifications that need to occur. The vowels shift in very odd ways, and it can vary depending on the person's voice. That's all I can really say on it for now. There's that issue, and then the other issue I find with a lot of guys is they tend to lose chord closure as they're going to the E flat and E above tenor high C. So that could also be a contributing factor in all of this for you. I don't know really what it is in your case, but those are just some things I can think of off the top of my head. Let's see, relevant to that topic, I tend to crack at the passaggio, but if I just start singing in my head voice, I can actually hit G5 in my full voice, 3 notes away from C6. What's up with that? If you crack at the passaggio, that means that you don't have enough chest voice. It means your chest voice is still underdeveloped, that it needs a lot more work. There's a certain baseline level of development that your chest voice must have in order for your voice to be stable at the passaggio. Okay? So if you can't go, I don't even know what note that is, but if you can't do something like that and not think twice about it to the point where that feels comfortable for you, and consistent, and maybe louder than what you want, but if you can at least do that up to like the F above middle C, then you can start working on the passaggio more in terms of actually working on shifting your vowels. If you try to shift the vowels before you've built up sufficient strength in your chest voice, your voice will break. That's just how it is. That's what will happen. You say head voice, you don't mean falsetto. When you do head voice, you still might be going too thin for what you need here. The chest voice just needs to be strong. Okay, Wadner asks, wait, where'd it go? How do you sing on rhythm? What do you mean singing? I just mean singing to the beat. So, for instance, there's all different kinds of rhythms. There's like this kind of marching kind of rhythm, like dun, dun, three, glory, glory, hallelujah, glory, glory, hallelujah. You have that kind of, that's a traditional rhythm that you'll often kind of hear in classical music and very early music. Then you have syncopated beats, which is mostly what's used in contemporary music, especially R&B, especially pop, some rock to some degree. You have I'm trying to think of a song for this. Basically a lot of Stevie Wonder songs would basically have this kind of syncopated beat that I'm thinking of. So let me think. Um, what's a good song? As the sun on the earth knows she's revolving, and the rosebuds know to bloom in early May. Just as faith knows love's a cure, you can rest your mind assured that I'll be loving you always. That right there, that I'll be loving you always. The beats of what I'm singing don't match up with the beats that I'm actually snapping on. And that's what makes this syncopated kind of feel, and that's what makes it sound spoken. And the mistake I hear a lot of people make is they try to sing it on the beat, and that's wrong for this style of music. They go, I'll be loving you always. They want everything to match up with the beats instead of hearing in between the beats. You have, I'll be loving you always. So that all comes in right before the beat does. And that's what I mean by singing to the beat. You have to get used to hearing that in your mind a lot. And if you're not used to hearing music that is composed well, that has all of these features in it, you're not going to know what to do when you actually encounter that music. You're not going to know how to move your body to the beat. You're not going to know how to snap to the beat. You're not going to know how to tap your foot to the beat. You're not going to know when to clap to the beat. You're going to clap on the wrong beats. You're going to clap on the 1 and the 3 instead of clapping on the 2 and the 4. So that's basically rhythm in a nutshell. Let's see. William says, I have a vocal coach that kept telling me I'm using my nose too much. What does that mean and how do I prevent it? Unfortunately, I can't interpret what that means without hearing you, because everyone has a different perception of what it means to sing in the nose. And this is the very thing I was getting at earlier, that when you're with a coach, if you have a question, you have to ask it to them, because they're the ones that have the vision for you. They're the ones that are choosing the terminology for you. Like the example I gave earlier with my teacher, sometimes she would tell people to pull chest up to a certain note. And it's not that she was teaching them to pull chest. It's just that's the idea that they had to think in their mind to get from point A to point B. So with what this coach is telling you, I don't know where he was trying to go with that, and I've never heard you before. So I can't really give you a lot on that. Maybe you were singing like, maybe you were singing like this, and you had this kind of a sound going. I don't know. I really don't know, unfortunately. Let's see. Anzer says, my observation was that because of my posture, my rib cage is collapsed. So when my tummy fills up with air, it makes sense that it pushes it vertically. You don't necessarily have to keep your rib cage high in order to fill with air, because if you really pay attention with breathing, the breath can expand in your body in many ways, depending on how you're positioned in your body. So if you do a back bend where, I don't know if I can do this here. I'll probably knock stuff over. But like if you're like leaning backwards like this to where you're like going all the way back like that, and then you try taking in breaths from there, what you'll notice is that it biases expansion on this whole front side of your body. Now, you do the opposite of that, and if you look on my channel, I have a video called like squat breathing. I can't remember what balloon squat, something like that. I think that's what I called it. Well, basically, it's you're sitting in a squat position and blowing up a balloon. When you do that, what does that do? It biases your back and your sides to have to expand, because you're kind of curled over like this, so you can't expand in the front here. So you have to learn how to expand back up in this region. So it is very dependent on how you hold your body, and that's kind of where I was getting at before when I said there's not really one way of breathing. Like it just really depends. You kind of have to be familiar with all of it. But yeah, you might want to give that exercise a try and see what you feel with it. Let's see. Fahim says, wait, where did it go? Hey Fahim, nice to have you here. So what are some good artists you recommend us to listen to? Maybe you can give a list or a playlist. Like I mentioned, like these artists from the 80s, the list of top 40 artists from the 80s. Most of them, generally speaking, were good. Generally speaking, maybe they had some technical issues with the voices here and there, but it was nowhere near to the degree as what you see now. Uh, Fahim with his perfect pitch. It was a G4. Okay. Can you explain the difference between singing the mask versus nasality? Okay. Once again, this is something that will vary depending on who you ask. So, um, the best I can say is that uh, when it comes to the quote unquote mask, people are referring to a sense of feeling vibrations in bone. Okay? You have bone all throughout your body, and when you make sound, you will the sound waves cause bone to vibrate. Okay? And you can feel those vibrations in many different places. You remember, so you have bones here in your ribs, and then your rib cage, your sternum, your collarbone. You can feel vibrations all along there. You can feel vibrations in the vertebrae of your spine. You can feel vibrations on the teeth here. They're hard surface. You can feel it on the hard palate. You can feel it on the bones of the face here, the cheeks, forehead, back of the head, your jaw. Basically, anywhere where there's a hard surface, when you make sound, it can get set into vibration. So when people are talking about mask resonance, normally they are referring to the sense of the sound vibrating either on the front teeth here, or on the hard palate, or on the bone of the nose here, or in the cheek area. That you're referring to feeling vibrations somewhere in that area. That's not something that I would necessarily go for. I just tell people, learn to sing the vowel clearly and learn to sing the vowel with good closure. If you get your chest voice activating and you sing with good closure and you sing the vowel clearly, it will cause these areas to go into vibration. So it's the difference of if I go when I do that, I feel the sound kind of vibrating like here a little bit and also like here a little bit. But then there's other ways of shaping the vowel too. I can change that and go more and that makes it vibrate differently. So I don't focus on the vibrations so much. I'm aware of them when I feel them, but I'm thinking in my mind vowel, 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 vowel. Get the vowel right. Now, if you're nasal, you'll get where the sound is still vibrating here, but I'm tight here now. This is not being coordinated correctly in the throat. So that's why I place such a high emphasis on vowels, because yeah, you just have to get that right. Let's see. What are my personal weaknesses you can see in my voice that I should work at? I feel like I have a lot more work needed to strengthen my chest voice. Yes, you have to work on strength. Your chest voice needs to keep getting stronger. It's not strong. It's not as strong as it could be. My home Dimash is the best singer in the world. Let's see. From a technical perspective, he is really well. Okay, so this is just about Dimash now. I've never really listened to Dimash that much, so I can't really speak much on him. But I would say there are many more singers out there who have a much higher level of musical development than Dimash, and those would be good people to listen to. Okay. What's your opinion on the 80s and 90s rock singers? Do you think some of them are good techniques? Who would you recommend to listen to? We come from rock. Good rock singers. Steve Tyler. Not everything that he did was correct, but Steve Tyler was good. I would say Steve Perry, not so much from a technical perspective, but from a musical perspective, was good. So the things to look for him are his sense of phrasing. He had a good sense of phrasing and pacing within a song, and how to let the song develop and unfold. That's what he did well. Uh Ian Gillan was very good. Uh who else? Well, at least in the 70s, I would say he was good. Um Robert Plant was good early on. Who else? Um, Current rock singer Jorn Lande. He's very good. He's actually very good from a technical perspective too. Who else? Those are just some people that I can think of off the top of my head. Freddie, okay, Freddie is an interesting one. I don't recommend him from a technical perspective, not at all. But from the standpoint of musicianship, like composition, like the composition of his songs and his understanding of music and how to communicate with music, top notch there. But when it comes to technique, no. Uh, Jacob. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for subscribing. Let's see. What do we have here? What's coming out? What else do we have here? Did I say Steve? Did I say Steve Tyler? I'm sorry, I meant Steven Tyler. Hopefully he didn't hear that. Okay. Let's see. Can you teach me how to sing like you? Yeah, I just need some lessons. How many lessons it would take, I don't know, but you could definitely learn to through lessons. Um, the third pitch is happening, and okay, if the voice gets too loud, you can't do them quietly correctly. Um, yeah, once you reach A5, the voice does kind of go basically falsetto. Like basically, by the time everyone gets to that note, they're pretty much in falsetto, like a pure falsetto, I would call it kind of sound. More like a kind of like more like a female, so to speak. Okay, if you want to talk about Stevie Wonder, that's a loaded topic. From a musical standpoint, Stevie Wonder is one of the probably greatest American song composers there are. Like if you really want to understand music and develop your ear, you need to listen to Stevie Wonder. From a voice usage perspective, he has his issues. Um, it depends on what decade you caught him in. Stevie Wonder from the 60s did not sing like Stevie Wonder from the 70s, did not sing like Stevie Wonder from the 80s, did not sing like Stevie Wonder from the 90s. Okay? So you have to take that into account when you're talking about Stevie Wonder. It's not like he sang the same all the time. When he was in the 60s, he sang darker. He sang more like, ah, he had more of that kind of a sound to his voice. Stevie Wonder in getting into 70s started singing a little bit higher. So if you look at his early songs, a lot of them didn't go that high, relatively speaking, compared to what you think of for Stevie Wonder now. His songs often only went up to like maybe F sharp G, maybe G sharp. And the thing that's really fascinating about that is this shows you how much music has changed over time, because if you look at tenor songs for that were intended for like musical theater, at that time period from like 1965 and prior, what was considered tenor songs at that time mostly only went up to the G above middle C, maybe the A, but most of the time it was only a G. Now, when you think of tenor songs for musical theater, you're thinking, oh, high C, D above high C, E above high C, some crazy nonsense like that. So things have changed over time, and Stevie Wonder was still part of this change too. So you'll hear his early songs didn't go as high. And that's a very important thing to remember as a developmental phase that I was mentioning earlier. If you don't have the ability to do those high notes, they come one at a time, gradually over time. So Stevie gradually worked his way up to being able to do that upper range consistently. So in the 70s, he started going higher, but he also started blasting more. He started blasting air through his vocal cords for the high notes. And that's why he started having voice problems. Okay. So he starts training with Seth Riggs. Then you have Stevie Wonder of the 80s. Stevie Wonder of the 80s, especially mid 80s, And that's when I feel he was at the height of his vocal technique. That's when things were the most secure, that he still had the low range in place. He didn't like lose his closure when he went to the high range. The vowels were modifying correctly as he went into the high range. The voice as a whole was aligned most correctly in the mid 80s. Then that's also when he started singing brighter, okay? But then as he moved into the 90s, he got carried away with that and started going too bright with the sound to the point where he got too high larynx. And like, he gets this kind of sound. And then he's getting more neck tension with it too. That's the kind of sound he would get. And you sing that way over time, and it makes your larynx just kind of get stuck in this kind of rigid, tight position. And that's basically what's been happening to him ever since basically the 90s. And Seth Riggs even commented on this, that that's one of the things that they worked on, is that Stevie Wonder has this tendency to sing nasal all the time, and he's trying to stay on him about that. So you also have to keep in mind that even when singers work with teachers, they don't always listen to the teachers, that they have a mind of their own and they have their own vision for what they want to do with their music. And even if it's not the best thing for them to do for their voices, they still do it anyway. So that's basically Stevie Wonder in a nutshell. Let's see. So why do you recommend Steven Tyler even though he has such a rough voice? Okay, Steven Tyler is interesting because like with all of these artists, it depends on when you catch them in their career. Steven Tyler is good from a musical perspective, that he understands how to connect with the audience, how to express something musically, where the music is trying to go. Like, he's good from a stylistic standpoint. With that said, if you've ever watched, there's a video of him online where it was on the Discovery Channel, maybe 2012 or so, when he was working with some voice problems. He was at the Massachusetts General Hospital, MGH. And I believe this is on the Discovery Channel where they aired this. And they showed him getting scoped. And what's so interesting about him is he was talking with the ENT, and he was saying, well, I have a bunch of different ways that I can sing this. He said, I have this one sound, and I have this other sound, and I have this other sound. And he can change them at will, at the snap of a finger. So he can go from sounding rough and raspy 1 second to sounding clear as a bell the next second. And modifying the vowels and everything set up perfectly. He's conscious and aware of that. Those are conscious choices that he makes. Now, with that said, are those choices always the best for him? No. But he's 100% in control of his voice and what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. So that's the reason why I recommend him. Because it's not like, and that's the point I'm trying to get across about these singers, especially from the 80s and prior, is they had an understanding of their voice. Just because they sang one way, that doesn't mean that that's the only way that they know how to sing. They always had more than one way of singing available to them. But a lot of times what you're just hearing on the recording or on CDs or whatever is just a choice that they made. Maybe not always the best choice in terms of their vocal health, but it's still a choice nonetheless, meaning it's not their only route. How can a man have a 5-octave range like Mariah and Whitney? Why would you need a 5-octave range? What's the usefulness of a 5-octave range when we actually talk about music? If you're talking about, there is no song that covers a 5-octave range, that most music that you're singing it, like you really have to think about this from a composition standpoint. So, number one, most songs only cover a range of 1 octave, maybe 1.5 octaves. Okay? For a really, really challenging song, it might cover 2 octaves, but it's just like kind of touching on those notes at the outskirts. Number two, as you start getting into the extremes of the voice, whether it's extreme low or extreme high, intelligibility goes out the window. Because especially when you go really high like that, there only exists one vowel. So there's not really any kind of possibility for words. If you're visiting a range like that, words are important when it comes to music. People compose music with words. If words weren't important, then you can just go and listen to instrumental music. That's what makes vocal music unique and different from everything else. It's the fact that words do exist, and people want to hear words, and they want to be communicate. They want to have a message communicated to them. The range of the voice where words tend to come across most crisply and most distinctly and most clearly for people are in the fourth octave. Fourth octave and somewhat the third octave. That's where you really get the most out of lyrics. That's why most songs tend to sit in that range, and then they only occasionally touch outside of that range for effect, for music that is composed well. If you look at really well composed songs, that's what they all tend to do. And it's for that reason, because once you start getting outside of that range of like a D5, E5, once again, you start losing intelligibility for words, because all the words sound the same. All the vowels sound the same when you start getting into that point. So that's the reason why you don't really hear this that much. So from a musical perspective, unless you're just doing something like improvisational jazz, there's no real use for a 5-octave range. Like, I can hit a lot of those notes, but I just don't do it often because it doesn't make sense to do it. It has no real, in most cases, it has no real musical purpose. Unless you are Rochelle Farrell. She's one of the few people that actually has all that range and knows how to use it in a musical way. So for instance, let me find this clip so I can show y'all. If it's still up. Rochelle Farrell is one of my favorite artists. Most people don't know about her. I gotta get up for my Philly artist. She lived right up the street from me, 5 minutes up the street from me, and I did not know it. I was so mad when I found that out. I was like, this incredible woman, like, literally was within a short drive from my house, and I could have been like badgering her to teach me every day, and I didn't even know about it until after she moved away. Anyway, what is her name? I'm gonna show you this clip if it will play. Found it. Okay, and I just need to change this over to. I'm gonna change this to that, and hopefully, can y'all still hear me? Yeah, it looks like it's still going. Okay, give me 1 second here. Now listen to this. Actually, I'm gonna let you see what I'm looking at. So give me 1 second. How do I do this? Let's do this, and let's change this to. Okay, I think that's right. Yep, that looks like it's about right. Alrighty. Okay, and I'm gonna take you, and I'm gonna do this to you. Hopefully that's it's the wrong screen. Okay, let's do it this way. I'm gonna do that. And okay, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that, and I'm just gonna do a little magic here and make this go so it actually fits. Alrighty, so listen to this. This is an example of how if you are a true musician and you're thinking of things realistically in terms of how would I use this to communicate something musically, you're going to hear Rochelle Farrell. She's going to do a run here that covers literally 4 octaves of her range. I believe it's 4 octaves, or maybe it's 3 octaves. Wait a minute. Let me think about that. Because she goes really low here. Something like 3.5 octaves, something ridiculous. But let me see if I can find it. So.
If you stay, baby, stay. And every day, baby, every day. will be Valentine.
Here, here's the one. It's coming now. So, that's what I mean by using it realistically. Like, most people, let me see, let me just get this out of here. Let me do this again, get rid of that. Most people don't have the musical intelligence, the musical sensibility to know how to utilize something like that in a musical context. So yeah, you may have the notes, but do you know how to actually using it musically? Basically, what she's doing is she's copying stuff like a trumpet player would do, or like a sax player would do. That's the kind of run that she just did with her voice, and she took it somewhere musically. Most people are not doing that. So, which goes back to my original point, you need to build up your musical ear. You have to get greater exposure to music to understand how to actually use it. It's not enough to have the notes, because what you're going to find is you'll get the notes and you'll go, oh yeah, and then you'll realize that you still sound horrible even though you have all those notes. It's because you don't understand music and you don't know what to do with them. So that's how I would answer that question. Let me see. Like, he's talking with no. If a rock singer can't sing clean, they probably abuse their voices. Now, that's one thing you have to keep in mind when it comes to rock singers and a lot of singers and styles like that, like blues, rock. Basically, any style where you hear a singer that has a lot of quote-unquote texture to the voice, you have to realize that in a lot of cases, that's the result of vocal damage, whether it's vocal damage from misuse of the voice, from bad technique, or vocal damage from not caring for their voice well, in the sense of drinking, in the sense of doing drugs, in the sense of, not getting sufficient rest for the voice, or anything along along that nature. All of those things, they damage your voice, especially if you do it over time. Like, for instance, Aretha Franklin is a perfect example of that. If you look at Aretha Franklin in the 60s and the early 70s, her voice, her technique was much better. The voice was good then. Then you listen to Aretha Franklin in the 80s. She has this kind of huskiness to her voice like this. And she gradually started losing her range. And she gradually started losing the power behind her voice. And it got worse and worse over time. Why? Because they said she was known to smoke 4 packs of cigarettes a day and then drink on top of that. You do that, you're going to have voice problems. Yeah, it'll make a texture in the voice, but that's still not good for your voice, looking at things long term. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let's see, who has really good, if not the best technique from a technique perspective? If you are a male singer and you want to really learn proper technique, you need to listen to operatic tenors. That's basically what it boils down to. Like, most male singers in today's world have certain degrees of limitations in the voice. Like, you very rarely come across someone whose voice is just developed well in terms of all the abilities from top to bottom, from loud to soft. Like, you very rarely come across that. So when I say opera singers, operatic tenors, I'm talking about people like Franco Corelli. I'm talking about people like his teacher, Giacomo Lauri Volpi. I'm talking about people like Caruso, people like who else? I'm drawing a blank here. Mario Filippeschi, people like that. Though that's who, if you really want to understand the male voice and really, really understand how it works, you need to listen to them. I've been listening to operatic tenors now, well, not just tenors, baritones, like all opera. Been listening to that now since 2004. I want to say 2004, 2005-ish. You got to spend a lot of time like really listening to saturate your ear with how the vowels are supposed to line up and what it's supposed to sound like as you go through different parts of your range and what the different intensities are supposed to sound like and blah, 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 blah. You got to spend a lot of time doing that. Now, with that said, Sergio Mendes, that I mentioned earlier, who had that song out in the 80s, Never Gonna Let You Go, he actually has a good command of his voice, and his technique has held up for several decades now. So he could be a good one to look at. Peeble Bryson isn't too bad. He has a few things here and there that he does that could be better, but he's not too bad. Rick James, when he was actually singing on his tracks, was actually pretty good. You know, had just things here and there that he needed to work on. But there's very few singers that I can just say, listen to them, they do everything 100% correctly. The singers like that are far and few in between. Like, you really have to go hunting hard to find such singers. Let's see. How's Michael Buble from a technique perspective? He's okay. He tends to blast air too much, so he tends to lose chord closure, and that makes excessive air go through his vocal cords, and that can create issues and it can cause irritation. Normally, he's not trying to sing that loud, so it's worse when you try to do it. That's just a bad habit to have, period. But if you try to sing loud and do that, that really causes issues. But he's not too bad, but yeah, not the best in terms of giving your ear a good model for what to copy. Frank Sinatra would be much better to copy than Michael Bublé. Frank Sinatra had more of the technical, like they sing in a similar style, but Frank actually had more of the technical aspects down compared to Michael Bublé. Oh, there is one guy I could think of that's actually really good. John Raitt, the musical theater artist from like the maybe 50s, 60s. Bonnie Raitt's father. He has a good understanding of all of these things. Is Stevie Wonder a lyric tenor? Yeah, it seems like he's some type of lyric tenor. Is who an alto? Who are you asking about being an alto? Oh, you're talking about Rochelle Farrell. No, she's not an alto. She's a soprano. She's a soprano. She just tends to have this extension into her low notes. And yeah, that was her head voice. She can go like all the way up like that to a F7. I believe she's going as high as an F7. Rochelle Farrell has a crazy range. She can go down to like an E flat 2, and she can go all. There's a recording of her. The song is called Waiting. There's a live recording of that. If you watch that, it's like a 25-minute song altogether. It's just a live performance that they did. But you want to talk about having everything under the sun demonstrated to you vocally that one could do in terms of rhythm and musicality and just control. Like let me show you why I gotta show you another clip from her now, because most people, like I said, don't know about Rochelle Farrell and don't know just how great she is. Like, I remember the first time I heard her was when I was 14. I went to the CD store. I forget what it was. Maybe it was Tower Records before they went out of business. But anyway, I went to the music store one day and I, was just buying random CDs. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to, try some new things that I'm not familiar with. And I think one of those albums I picked up was Rochelle Farrell's album. And so I went home and I listened to it and I was like, what is this craziness I'm listening to? I've never heard anything like this before. I was like, I didn't know what. like my mind didn't know how to process what I just heard. And then I, showed it to my family and my uncle. And then he goes, "Oh yeah, Rochelle Farrell, you didn't know about her?" He was like, "Yeah, that woman can really sing." He was like, "You think other people can sing?" He's like, "She's on an entirely different level of voice understanding and voice usage than anybody else that you will ever come across." And it's to the point where even right now, the people in the industry who are some of the best singers in the industry, when they get on stage to sing with Rochelle Farrell, they all get scared. All of them get intimidated because they know there is nothing that is impossible for that woman. Like, it's like you think you're pulling out your best trick. She can one up you again and again and again. And you go, "Where did that come from? Where did that come from?" And you just like, I just give up now. I just give up. Everybody's scared to sing with her, even the really good singers. She's that good. Like, there are not words to describe her level of understanding of music. She exists in a category unto herself. But anyway, let me show you this clip I'm looking for. So, where is the clip? I believe this is the song. Yeah, this is it. Listen to this, and you're going to hear just the control that she has over her voice is just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous control. The range out of this world. And she can hold a note longer than anybody else. Listen to the phrasing, the uses of dynamics.
I knew that of God.
And then Mr. George Duke over there on the keys, he is just a beast. It's just ridiculous. Listen to all that. That's control. And she's still holding the note. Still holding the note. She's imitating instruments. Now listen to this. Listen to the control here. Watch this.
In my heart. Yeah, in my heart. In my heart.
How many other people do you know that can do that? That can sit and hold a note and do a messa di voce on the note and hold it so controlled throughout every single note in her range.
Now I'm happy that I found you, 'cause you're not afraid to say, welcome to my love.
By the way, her drummer there, oh God, I can't think of his name right now. John, I'm drawing a blank. Her drummer is really good too. Like the whole band is good, but that's what I'm talking about. That is like control. Give me 1 second here while I get back out of this. I think I will react to that Dimash clip if you just give me a moment here. Do you know how to do whistle tones? I don't do whistle tones. It just feels like my head voice just continues. Now with that said, excuse me, I can only go up to like a C6. Like C6 is what I have consistently. Some days I can go up to a F6, but I don't rely on it. I don't depend on it. Um, but I can do it. It still feels like my head voice to me. It doesn't feel like a different voice. It just feels like head voice becomes even thinner by the time you get to those notes. But let's see. Wadner asks, so having texture to your voice is a bad thing. Yes, if that texture is coming as the result of vocal damage, but that's why you need a teacher to help you understand the difference. So what texture is just a result in terms of you playing around with your voice, and what's the result of of improper technique and damage and things of that nature. So let's see, how can you have control and agility at the same time? That's just a thing of practice. You once your voice is stable in terms of you can hold out notes securely, then you have to work on moving your voice fast through those notes, through those exact same notes. Um, let's see, what would I need to do to get overall softness in my voice? I know it covers lots of stuff. Give me like top. I'm not sure of where you're at vocally right now in terms of what your capabilities are. So, um, what I would tell you is work on your head voice. So, like, get very good at that sound and taking that all up and down your range. Uh, so like, being able to work with that all up and down, all up and down, and uh, and then being able to do that on different vowels. So oo and e will be the easiest to do that on. Then you have to learn to do it on like ah, when you can do it on like a ah or on any vowel and still keep it in a non-breathy way. That's the beginnings of how you get softness in your voice. That's another area of control. And that's what I was just demonstrating with Rochelle Farrell in that clip. When she held out that note, that high B flat 5, and she started out in this. She started out like that. Like, is that still the note? Sorry, I went up higher. I went up to the next note up, a B5. Or maybe that was the note. Anyway, you have to learn to keep that same kind of sound and throughout all the way up and down your range. Hi, online names are strange. Thanks for joining in, Brian. Not sure. I know that last clip was a little bit low in volume, so maybe that's what it was. With Rashid, I don't know exactly what's going on with his voice. I know he has some type of closure issue. I don't know what is the cause of it or what's the result of it. But in spite of that, he still learned how to make his voice flexible and work around that. I'm just saying it's so mythical and not scientific with so many advice. Come on, react to Diamash. She was definitely messed the other goddess that before was nice. Jasmine Sullivan sings in a very percussive way because who is she imitating? Kim Burrell. That's who she's imitating. So Jasmine Sullivan has this nice kind of this kind of like, yeah, she knows how to really emphasize the beat in a nice way. So give me 1 second. I will do the reaction to this Dimash Adagio clip. Let me just fix these settings here. So I gotta make me small again. Oh, I did the wrong one. So do this. There we go. Okay, and let's go to this and back to this again. And all right, I'm gonna do a reaction to this clip. I don't think I've seen this before, so bear with me. Dimash Adagio. Adagio Sochi. Is this the same clip, or I guess I'll do this one. Why is the audio so low? 1 second. I'm going to turn this up some. 1 moment. Because it's quite low for me. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to change back to this. And now let's do it. Alright, there we go. That's better. Now, one thing I want to say before I watch this clip is Lara Fabian. She is an incredible artist in terms of when it comes to interpretations of songs. Now, she has her technical issues that she needs to work on, but when it comes to finding the essence of a song and interpreting a song and learning how to connect with it, that's one of her strengths. That is one of her extreme strengths. So that's what I'm going to be comparing Dimash to as I listen to this. Is I don't really care about high notes and all that stuff. I care about what kind of message are you communicating? Is your message believable? Is it something that sounds sincere? Is it something that like really moves you and speaks to you in a very strong way? So with that said, I'm going to keep listening.
Don't know where to find you. I don't know how to reach you. I hear your voice in the rain. I feel you under my skin.
Okay, I'm gonna pause this so far because I want to comment on that. So, just what he did so far, I'm not a fan of that because I felt like he was starting to create a picture for you. He was starting to paint a picture for you, and it was beginning to unfold. And then all of a sudden, he just throws an entirely different picture at you. Like, to me, there was no reason to go to jump up an octave that fast and that abruptly. Like, from an interpretational standpoint, it doesn't add any, in my opinion, it doesn't really add anything to the music. Now, it is cool that he has that effect in his voice to where he has that color, but in terms of the interpretation, I don't think it was called for here. And as a matter of fact, because I haven't heard this song in a long time, I'm going to go listen to Lara sing it right after this for comparison. So we'll see. But we'll see what else he does.
Within my heart and my soul, I wait for you.
Okay, good control there. I would have started out in that octave instead of starting very low like he did, because like I said, it disrupts the mood of the song a lot, and it takes away from the flow of the message.
How did I do without you? All of my dreams without you. I see any touch of you'll be my arms. Close my eyes and then away.
Okay, now as soon as he got to this part right here, he started depressing his tongue on the larynx. He was like, I don't know why he just started doing that out of nowhere.
It's okay. I want so bad. I want so nothing more to explain. I know I've got to wait. It's another place. Said to heed my heart. Said to give me your love.
He has a lot of tongue tension on these. He's a lot on these notes. Okay, so this is my overall take on this, and that's it was okay for me. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great for me either, because I feel like I said, interpretation, like communicating something, is really important to me, and I feel like he started out communicating something, like before he started going higher in the song, that it did start unfolding a picture, telling a story for you. And then once he started getting to more of those belty parts, he kind of lost touch with that. I felt more like I was watching one of those musical shows, well, I guess that's kind of what it is, where, you know, you have singers competing with one another, and they're all trying to one up each other by, you know, showing off, oh yeah, I can belt this high note here, I can go this high, I can, without it really having a purpose in terms of the interpretation, in terms of the musical context. Like, I don't feel like that. I feel like he was doing it just to show off that he could do it, rather than doing it to add something more to what the song was trying to communicate. So, but he needs to watch out for that tongue tension. He doesn't do it all the time, but he gets it in there a lot of the times when he's in the upper range. I don't know why he's doing that, but I mean, he has a good voice and has good control over his voice. But I'm gonna listen to Lara sing that now. Oh, this DVD here, this is good. Oh, this is loud. She had a performance of Broken Vow on that same DVD. It was excellent. Also, her performance of Caruso, excellent. Excellent. Excuse me. Let me see what we have here. Already, she's telling a story. She's telling you a story. She's making you listen. She has so many different vocal colors and inflections and so many little subtleties. And what she's doing, she is not about, let me show off I can do this, let me show off I can do it. It's about, I have something I want to say to you. I have something I want to share with you. That's what she's doing. That's the difference.
Within my heart and my soul, I wait for you. I
listen to something else. This is something that Dimash didn't kind of catch on. You hear there's a gradual build up, that as the song goes on, she's gradually bringing in more intensity. That's letting the story gradually unfold. Because if you compare this to what she was singing right before it, this is a little bit stronger now. You'll be in my arms. The way she pulled that off, it's like little subtleties like that makes the difference between pros and people who are at a lesser level. Listen to that line again. Like that just adds such nuance to this. Like, hold on. That was so subtle and so tastefully done, but it adds so much to the interpretation of it. I forgot how much Lara sounds like Celine Dion. Now she just went into her Celine mode right here. I've walked so far, I fought so hard, nothing more to explain. I know all that remains is a piano that plays. If you know where to find me, if you know how to reach me, before this light fades away, before I run out of faith, be the only man to say that you'll hear my heart, that you'll give it your life, forever you'll That was good. That was good. So, when it comes to Lara, what I was mentioning earlier about, okay, song composition, again, you see exactly what I'm saying there, that when words are important, the song mostly tends to sit in the fourth octave and the lower parts of the fifth octave, and also some of the third octave. That's where you get the most intelligibility within words. When it comes to guys singing, especially in the lower parts of the fifth octave, you lose a lot of intelligibility of words. When women sing in the lower parts of the fifth octave, you can still get the words to come across. You know, they still take on character and meaning. But that, in my opinion, is how it's done. There were some technical problems that she had, like especially when she goes into Celine Dion mode. Celine Dion tends to do this thing where she kind of gets a little in her voice, and Lara also picked up on that too. So she tends to do that. That could be addressed. And then as she goes to the really high notes, she tends to lose closure a little bit because she has to let go of some of that tongue tension. But aside from that, it was a good performance. So let's see what we have here. Can you check out Adam Lambert, Mama 2012 live? Sorry, he was. Adam Lambert is good. Adam Lambert is actually very good. What is this? A question about Whoa, wait, slow down. A question about distortion and chesty voice and higher notes. Can anybody do it with enough practice over time? Can anyone sing like Dio with enough practice and discipline? I'm not. When it comes to chesty higher notes, yes, everyone can learn that. That's a part of basic technique. When it comes to distortion, I'm not the best person to ask about that. I don't know as much about distortion. So you might want to ask someone else about that. You said Dimash's second half. See, that's where I disagree. I don't feel like Dimash to me was just going loud for loud's sake, not going loud to actually communicate something and complement the music. If you listen to Lara, she complemented the music as she went into the second half of the song. And it's all about complementing the music, not trying to compete with the music and drown out the music. Let me see. There was one more clip I wanted to go on. Somebody else mentioned it. I'm trying to see what it was here. I think I missed it. What was the clip? I can't remember what it was now. I'm like totally drawing a blank. Yeah, I don't really care for Dimash's, like, I generally don't like male singers when they're singing when they're trying to sing a female range. I mean, it's nice as a party trick, but when you're trying to sing an entire song in a female range, it generally doesn't come across well because number one, you lose the intelligibility of the words, and number two, it just doesn't get pulled off well. I'm not really a fan of it. I know a lot of people are impressed by it, but to me, it does like nothing for me. Yeah, he just shows off his range. Exactly, that's what I mean. It's just him showing off instead of actually trying to communicate something. So let me think of a good example of a song where someone is actually communicating something. Like, maybe I'll do a Stevie Wonder song because, a good example. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this Stevie Wonder song, All Is Fair in Love, but I was just recently getting into that, and Jennifer Hudson had actually a really good cover of that song. I don't know if it's still up on YouTube now because it was for the Grammys, and they're going to take stuff down. But this is what, in my opinion, a good performance from an interpretational standpoint sounds like when you actually are communicating something where you can show off but still communicate at the same time. So take a listen to this.
Have touched all of us so dearly.
Now, one thing that Jennifer Hudson used to do is she used to go crazy with just like belting, and she lacked subtlety in songs. And that was one of the things that she was criticized of when she was first on American Idol and for much of her early career. But she did and does have the ability to show different shadings in the voice. And this is one of those performances where she really shows off, hey, I'm telling you guys a story. Listen.
I only hope to touch you with this.
Oops.
All is fair in love.
Listen to that first line. All is fair in love. she's starting to paint the picture for you. She's beginning to tell you a story.
Love's a crazy game. Two people vow to stay, and love is one they share. But all is changed with time. A future none can see.
Listen to what she did there. She's mixing. She just had a belted note for a moment to give a musical accent. She's not belting to belt. She's belting because it makes sense to do there musically. A future none can see. A future none can see. She's emphasizing the word for you and accenting the music by going louder just for that one note and then backing it back off again. That's music. That is basic musicianship. That's the difference between what I'm talking about with Dimash versus someone who's actually like really on top of their game.
The road you leave behind.
And now a gradual build up.
Ahead lies mystery.
And then the way she backed off from that read to give you this change in mood, this change in expression, this constant contract. It's like expanding and then contracting with the dynamics of the song to tell a story, to give you, and you notice it's just different dynamics that give you all these different colors in the voice and makes it interesting to listen to. So listen to that again. That's
Ahead lies mystery.
beautiful.
'Cause all is fair in love. I had to go away. A writer takes pen.
Listen to the musical accents. A writer takes his pen. She belts it just for a second because she's outlining the musical phrase for you. That's what music is.
To write the words again, that all in love is fair. All the fate of chance, it's either good or bad. I toss my coat to share, and love with me you stay. But all in one, so you either win or lose.
Good.
When all is put away, yeah, the losing side I play, 'cause all is fair.
Now it's appropriate to belt in the song. Now is appropriate to go into belt mode because you're coming back around to the chorus again. You're emphasizing the point that you originally made. All is fair in love, because all is fair in love. So she did it softer the first time to show, felt one way about it. Now you get to the song, you get to the second chorus. I feel more strongly about it. I'm emphasizing my point here. That's why she's belting. She's not belting to belt. She's belting because it serves a musical purpose.
I should have never let you side. A writer takes his pen to write the words again. All in love is fair. A writer takes his pen to write the words again.
such a diva. Such a diva way to end the song. To walk off stage, still holding out the note, turn back around just to let people know I'm still holding that note, I still got it, and then put the mic down. That's a diva move, a straight up diva move. But that is singing. That is the difference. Like, that's actually communicating something in music. Well, the thing with Dimash, and this gets into a little bit of, individual taste personally, is I'm more familiar with Lara Fabian. And even though I didn't hear that song specifically first, that's kind of the standard that I'm expecting. If I hear you're going to cover a Lara Fabian song, then I'm expecting that, okay, communicate something to me, because that's what her songs are all about. They have this sense of drama, but also the sense of tenderness and the sense of really trying to communicate a message very strongly. And that's immediately what I'm going to be looking for when I hear a song that you say, oh, I'm going to cover one of her songs. Let's see. Daryl Ong. Okay, yep, that's a Stevie Wonder song. Okay, I will check out that Daryl Ong song. Daryl is good. Daryl is really good from a musical perspective. But yeah, this Jennifer Hudson cover, that's singing. That's expressing something through music. That, yes, we know that Jennifer Hudson can belt all the way up to a B5. But does she have to show that off in every single song? No. Does she have to belt in every single song? No, because music is not about showing off what you can do with your voice. It's just you develop those abilities, so that way you can communicate a message to people. And you don't always have to go over the top all the time in order to communicate something to people. So, but that's a lesson that you learn over time. And not saying that everyone is perfect at it. Everyone has their moments when they lose it and they go overboard and whatever. But that's a part of learning as an artist, is you learn what's appropriate and what's not appropriate and what lets the message come across most effectively. You just keep learning that more and more over time. Okay, what is this? Daryl Ong. What is the word? What is the song? Ed Sheeran. Which Ed Sheeran song? Well, for me, like I said, he has a good voice. Dimash, he has a good voice, and he has a lot of range. But to me, range is not what makes a singer. It's knowing what to do with the range. It's knowing how to communicate with the range. That's something that people only learn over time. So I'm sure if he was only 22 at that time, that by the time he gets 32, he'll be able to communicate a lot more. Because Jennifer Hudson was the same way. When she was young, she had the range and she had the power. She's rough around the edges and she could communicate sometimes, but it didn't always come across as well as it could have. But yeah, that's just my opinion on it. So let's see, dive. Let's see, what do we have here? Now, from the stuff I've heard from Daryl before, he's always been very musical and a good sense of phrasing.
Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe I waited too long. Maybe I played my cards wrong. Oh, just a little bit wrong. Baby, I apologize for it. I can fall, I can fly here in your airplane. I could live, I could die hanging on the words you say. I've been known
I don't know what he's doing with his voice there, but he needs to be very careful with that kind of raspiness that he's getting in his voice there. That's the result of him losing chord closure. And yeah, he needs to be very careful with that because that can ruin the voice very fast.
If you don't believe it, so let me know the truth before I dive right into you. You're a mystery. I have traveled the world, and there's no other girl, no one like you. And what's your history? Do you have a tendency to lead some people on? 'Cause I heard
That
you.
was a nice vocal line. The way the melodic shape of that whole line, that was really nice. I want to hear that again.
Do you have a tendency to lead some people on? 'Cause
That's a
I
nice line.
heard you do. Yeah. I can fall, I can fly here in your airplane. I could live, I could die hanging on the words you say. I've been known to give my all and lie awake every day. Don't know how much I can take. So don't call me baby unless you mean it. No, no, don't tell me you need me if you don't believe it. So let me know the truth, girl, before I dive right into you. No, 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 no. I can fall, I can fly here in your airplane. I could live, I could die hanging on those little words you say. I've been known to give my all, sitting back and looking at every mess that I made. So don't call me baby unless you mean it. No, 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 don't tell me you need me. Oh, no, if you don't believe it, let me know the truth before I dive right into you. Before I dive right into you. Before I dive right into you.
Okay, so let's talk about that clip. All right, so um, okay, so that Daryl clip, he needs to be very careful when he's on those upper notes. In my opinion, I feel like the song is a little bit too high for him. I would prefer him um sing it down a couple of keys. I feel like he could do much more with it. A few keys lower, and then he would stop running into the strain that he's getting on those upper notes in this song. Um But he really needs to be careful with that raspiness that's coming in. That's losing chord closure, and that's what you call blasting high notes. That's the fastest way to get vocal damage, is by blasting high notes like that. And if I were working with him, I would like really be on top of that. So, like I said, I think he has a really good ear and a good sense of music, but I think this song will work even better for him 2, maybe 3 keys lower. I think it would be perfect if he, probably 2 keys lower would be good. So 2 half steps lower. That's probably where I would have him sing this, and I think you get a lot more out of it there. But he's a good artist overall. Let's see what we have here. Okay, there was one more singer somebody mentioned that I missed. Bruno Mars had the type of rasp in his voice too, that airy quality in the voice. Yeah, Bruno Mars needs to be careful of that too. That's not something that that is healthy. That you don't want that in there. Let's see, Tolu Band Fiji, isn't she lovely? I'll take a look at that. Band Fiji. Let's see what we have here. Okay. Da 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 da.
Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? Isn't she precious?
Now, the first thing I want to point out here, this guy's intonation is really good. He has really good intonation.
Less than 1 minute, oh, I never thought through love would be making one as lovely as she. But isn't she lovely? Made from love. Isn't she pretty? Truly the angel's best. Boy, I'm so happy. We have been having been. I can believe what God has done. I was given life from one, but isn't she lovely? Made from love. Isn't she lovely? Life and love are the same. Life is Aisha, the meaning of her name. And it could have not been done without you consider someone so very lovely, made from love.
That was good. He's really good. He's really good. He has a really good sense of pitch and intonation. And I think that's his like real strength. Like all of those notes are just like spot on and perfect. And that's what I was talking about earlier about developing one's musical sense, that if you aren't listening to singers like this that have that degree of accuracy and intonation, then you're missing out. Like Tori Kelly is another one who has really good intonation like that. She's like a robot. It's like ridiculous how clean her intonation is. Intonation is just your pitch, how well you sing the pitch in tune. Being right dead on the pitch rather than being sharp or being flat or being whatever. Tori Kelly makes all of us insecure. Like, hold on, I want to show you. There's this one clip where she's singing with Jeremy Passion. He's really good, by the way. Like, I'm a big fan of Jeremy Passion. But he did this one clip with Tori Kelly when they did Broken Hearted by Brandy. And she just sang him into the ground. I mean, he's really good, but she is so good that she makes him sound bad because her pitch is just like so tight and so precise. It is ridiculous. Like, you gotta hear this. She's like a machine. It should be illegal to be that good.
Broken hearted.
Even right there on the harmony starting out, you can hear that her pitch is just so tight and precise. Like, just the starting part here.
Broken hearted.
It's so precise.
Life's not over. I can start again while I'm lonely. Broken hearted. It's a hurting thing to get over. I'm young, but I'm wise enough to know that you don't fall in love overnight. That's why I thought if I took my time, that everything in love would be right. So as soon as I close my eyes.
Now you hear when Jeremy comes in, he is by no means bad at all. He's not even anywhere close to being bad. But next to Tori Kelly, you hear the difference. His intonation is not as sharp and as precise as hers. Like, hers is just like, his is like here, hers is just like on some other level altogether. But he's not bad. Don't get me wrong. He's not bad at all. I'm a big fan. I love him. But this shows the difference between the ear. When your ear is like good versus really, 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 really good.
I was saying to love goodbye.
Like I was saying to love goodbye. Like it's not as like, I can't even do it as sharp as Tori Kelly does, but it's not as sharp as precise as Tori.
But I guess I'm only broken hearted. Life's not over. I can start again while I'm lonely. Broken hearted. It's a hurting thing to get over. No more empty conversation. Next time I will be totally sure.
Now, one thing I will say here about Jeremy is he could get tighter intonation if he sang into his voice more. So he sang more into his chest voice, which is going to make the voice go brighter. But this is where you have to make a decision from a musical standpoint. So on that one, in that sense, yes, his pitches would get more tight and more intact. That's what Wanye does when he sings with Brandy. He sings into the voice more. But Tori has a really light voice. She has a really light voice. If he sings into his voice more, he's going to overpower Tori. and it's going to throw off the blend that they're trying to go for in the song. So he had to choose the lesser of two evils, which was, okay, I sing a little bit lighter into my voice. It's going to make me not be as tight on the pitch as I could be, but the overall color in terms of how it blends with her is going to work better in terms of the bigger picture. So you always have to be thinking of choices like that. And I think it was the appropriate choice to make in this scenario. Now, if he were singing with another singer, a singer that had a stronger voice, then he could sing into his voice more and be more precise.
Don't want the pain of falling in.
See, with stuff like that, if he sang into his voice more, it's not going to blend with Tori.
Love, it's more than my whole heart should know.
So I listen to all advice and remember each time I cry.
But I guess I'm only broken hearted. Life's not over. I can start again while I'm lonely, broken hearted. It's a hurting thing to get over.
And the thing about Tori Kelly is this is so natural for her that she's not even trying. It's just like she's just sitting there being chill, relaxed, and everything just comes out perfectly in tune. It's ridiculous.
But as soon as I close my eyes,
And I remember
each time I cry, oh, never thought I'd be alone again. That's why I asked you to be my best friend. Don't you know you're always on my mind? I think about you all the time. I'm lonely, broken hearted. Life's not over. I can start again while I'm lonely, broken hearted. It's a hurting thing to get over.
that
Da, 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 da.
I'm broken.
Even that where she's just singing very lightly, almost to the point of being breathy, is still so precise. The pitches and so control. Listen to that again. That's ridiculous.
I'm broken hearted.
That's good. Great performance. Excellent performance. Excellent performance. Let me see. Okay, let me see. I missed a bunch of comments here. Okay, use the rest for some because it's unexpected from the gender. Tori Kelly's a boss lover to death. What can we do to bring precision? Okay, to bring precision to the pitch. That's the thing of your vowel. If you sing, when you need really precise pitches, you have to sing with a more clear tone. So if you go, how's it? I'm young, but I'm trying to think of one of the lines from that song. One of the lines that Jeremy sang. Give me 1 second while I go back to him.
My time.
Close my So as
soon as I close my eyes, if you sing it like that with kind of texture to the voice, those kind of textures make it harder to match pitch. If you go, but as soon as I close my eyes, and you sing like more into your voice, where you get more of this coming out in your voice, it makes it easier to control the intonation in your voice. Give me 1 second. But as soon as I close my eyes, if you're saying it more like that, it'll be more in tune. I was saying to love, even no, that word love, I just sang that out of tune. I was saying to love, because it was a bad vowel. Love, tuning the vowel that way makes it go flat. I was saying to love. If I think more like now I get to the upper side of the pitch. I was saying to love goodbye. As a goodbye. That kind of tone is better for blending with people. But when you need pitch precision, it doesn't let you get it. It's harder to get very precise pitches with that kind of a texture or color in the voice. But yeah, she doesn't need auto-tune at all. Jeremy does kind of sound like me now that you mention it. We're the same voice type. Like, he's an example of a light baritone voice, and that's why I can sing along with him easily, because our voices sit in a very similar way. But yeah, she's definitely a beast. She's like ridiculous. 1 second, let me see. So now this is where you have to be thinking about musical concerns when it comes to choosing songs to sing. You have to think about what is the instrumentation like and how does it sit relative to your voice. So if you know you naturally have a strong voice and you're trying to sing something that's like a very gentle kind of instrumentation like that, where it's just a guitar, an acoustic guitar, that's probably not the best compliment for your voice, unless maybe you naturally have more of this darker kind of mellow tone that doesn't compete with the guitar too much. But if I go something like, but as soon as I close my eyes, I sing the wrong note, I'm sorry, I was saying to love goodbye. If I just sing freely and naturally, my tone tends to come out a little bit more like that. I don't have to do it that way, but I have to focus if I'm going to sing it in a way other than that. But if I know that my voice has that kind of color and texture, I don't want something that has too light of an instrumentation if I have to go into higher ranges of my voice. And just like that, you also want to keep that in mind when you're choosing who you sing with. It's not good enough to say, oh, I want to sing with you because you're a good singer. No. You have to think you're a good singer. That should be like assumed. But then you have to think, how does my voice sound against yours? How does it blend with yours in the context of this song, in the context of the instrumentation, in the context of everything that's going on? Is that a good match together? And this is something that I was mentioning earlier, once again, about songs in the 80s. A lot of times when you had duets in the 80s, whoever was the producer or whatever for the songs at that time, who had the musical vision at that time, they understood these things about voices, that you don't throw two people together just because they're the two most popular artists out there right now. No, because the voices might not blend. You may have someone that naturally has a lot of to the voice, like Jennifer Hudson. You don't pair them with someone like Jeremy Passion, because unless you're looking for a very specific effect, the voices they're mismatched. They're not going to blend. They're not going to sit well together. So these are all things that when you really get into music, you have to think about all this stuff. And this is what I mean by understanding music. Like, this is what's going through my head all the time. He's a little more flat in his ends, yes. So when you talk about intonation, you talk about the compression ratio in the moment you hit the note. No, not necessarily. Intonation is just its own thing. But depending on you as a singer, how a song sits in your voice, you might have to do different things to get the note to come in, to be in tune. So like I mentioned earlier, the three most important things when it comes to music, which are the basic fundamentals of all music, whether it's vocal music or instrumental music or whatever, it doesn't matter where it's at in the world. There are three basic fundamentals. 1, pitch. 2, rhythm. And 3, dynamics. Those are the three things that are always should be running through your mind. It shouldn't be, let me belt this note. It should be rather, what's appropriate for this note that lets me sing it with good intonation and lets me not get behind the beat and lets me use the right dynamic level appropriate for that pitch. Because of how that song sits in my voice, it sits high in my voice. It starts getting into a brighter part of my voice. If I were singing it in a range that feels comfortable to me, that feels natural to me, I would be more like I'm young but I'm wise enough to know that you don't fall in love overnight. Now, with that said, because those are low pitches by their nature, when the lower you are in your voice, the harder it is to sing in tune, the harder it is to be very precise on pitches. You kind of have to be high a little bit to really get that precision. But that's where it sits more naturally for me. If I do it in the original key, that's not where I would most naturally want to sing it. But this is the individual differences in voices and learning what is appropriate for me, what range sits well for me, what kind of instrumentation sits well for me, what kind of music complements my voice well, what kind of tones and textures do my voice produce, and how does that work with the interpretation of the song? Because there'll be certain songs that you like, but the natural tone of your voice doesn't work well to bring out what needs to be brought out in that music. And this is all stuff you have to think about. You shouldn't just sing a song just because. I mean, it's nice to try it, but when it's all said and done, you want music that shows your strengths rather than your weaknesses. You should always be capitalizing your strength. Let's see, you can tell Tori doesn't take intonation for granted. She's put in extra work to get that precise. Yeah, I mean, of course, she's definitely put in work to, like, anyone who gets that good puts in work. But she's put in so much work that now it's become like kind of a background process for her. It's like breathing for her now. Let me see. That's something I feel like you have to record yourself and listen back to get the precise that precise in terms of ear. Recording is one way of getting the extra precision and pitch, but it's not the only way. Like, you can also do it just simply by, like, I know this is like a foreign thing for some people, but when I sing a cappella, I know when I'm out of tune. Most people don't have that sense of when they're out of tune if there's no other instrumentation around. I can always hear the note in my head that I intended to sing, and I can hear when it's slightly off versus dead on. And that's a sense that you have to keep building up over time. Now, within a certain degree, there is a certain degree of acceptability of being slightly off on a pitch. Like, for instance, with Jeremy Passion, the way that he's off on the pitches is still within acceptable range. You know, there are some people who are superhuman and they have this like inhuman intonation, and then there's everybody else who have normal intonation, more like Jeremy Passion. He's still within acceptable range. You still, in your mind, have to know that you were off. But, you know, that's something that gets built up over time. One way to be more in tune is to deliberately try singing out of tune. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. How do you sing with singers you struggle to blend with? Is it better to just avoid that at all costs, or is there a way to make it work when you're a great singer? That's a good question. Um, well, for one thing, I would say number one, make sure you're singing in a range that's appropriate for you. What does that mean? That means singing in a range where you know you can keep your voice controlled well, where you know you have lots of flexibility in terms of dynamics and lots of flexibility in terms of colors, where you don't have to struggle to do it. That's consideration number one. If you're singing in a range that is a bit unnatural to you or a bit challenging for you, then you're going to struggle with all of those things more, and then that's going to make the blending process a much more difficult thing to go about with. Now, this goes back to my other issue I mentioned earlier. You have to consider you in relation to the other singers that you're with. Like, are these voices complementary to each other in terms of the natural tone of each voice, the natural texture of each voice, and the style in which you're singing. Like, for instance, in a lot of I'm trying to think of songs, like, because there's different types of background singers. Like, for instance, I showed Gladys Knight the other day on the other live stream when she was singing with the Pips. She had the Pips singing background for her, 3 male singers. And they all tend to sing in falsetto. That's a very unique background sound. And it's really easy to blend in those types of situations. So if you're a background singer, you have to use your falsetto a lot. And you have to be a master of control at your falsetto, because that's going to be the blending color in a lot of situations. But that's one type of blending sound. And then you have a totally different type of blending sound, which, they want big vocals. They want these big belty vocals. Like, there's this group I just went to see last week or maybe 2 weekends ago. Their name is Kana's Voice. They are a group of 3 singers. They each had solo careers starting out individually, but they came together to form this group 2 years ago. And you'll hear they have a lot of big vocals. One second. They have a lot of big vocals in this song.
So run back to him today.
Where is it? Actually,
make
here.
Back in his arms is where he wants you to be. And what he longs for is to see you totally, completely.
See, now listen to Taranda, the female singer. She has that very prominently in her voice. Now, in this context, it works because you have everybody singing strong. So if everybody needs to be singing strong, then in those contexts, it's okay to have these variances in people's voices, to have these colors that stand out because they sound good in that context. But if you have a voice that naturally has a lot of rah to it, even when you're singing softer, and the music that you're singing has a lot of soft dynamics in it, or like medium volume dynamics, it makes it more problematic. So the way that you get around that is you sing lower in your range to where that doesn't stand out in the voice as much, so that way you're not fighting your voice so much. Yeah, that's how I would go about it. But yeah, let me see if there's anything else in Skip I wanted to point out. See, you hear the female, his heart, you hear her voice in there very prominently, and the other 2 voices are just kind of adding color to it. So that particular blend works for them. They've learned how to work around that and make that work in their arrangements of their music, in terms of how they arrange the harmonies and the keys that they choose for songs and so on and so forth. They make it work for them. And so every single situation is different. You have to take the group as a whole and figure out, okay, given what everyone's voices do, what works best for all of us? What works best for the overall picture? Let's see. When I try to sing louder, I get flat. Runs are beyond hard, easy. Okay, that could just simply be from underdevelopment of your voice. If you tend to be flat when singing louder, that's probably a vowel tuning issue that you're not honing in on the resonance of the vowel correctly. Runs being hard when singing louder. You don't do runs when you're at a very loud volume. Runs, when you have to do things involving flexibility with the voice, you need to be at a medium volume, not a super loud volume. Super loud volumes don't work with runs. So that's something to keep in mind. But runs do have to be practiced. Like, you have to practice a lot with flexibility and agility in the voice. You talk loud naturally, then you might just be a naturally loud person. How about for soul singers? I think soul singers are flatter. Yes, soul singers, depending on who you listen to, there's some range of variability. Not everyone is flat. Some are more flat than others, but this all goes back to the level of that person's ear. Some people can't hear. Some people's ears are not sensitive to pitch like other people's ears. And I'm trying to think of someone who's a popular singer but who doesn't have that precise of an intonation. I can't think right now, but I'm going to show you someone. This is a flamenco singer that I listen to but has very good intonation. Antonio Jose. Y si fuera ella. Okay. Listen to him. I'm going to show you some of the runs that he does. They almost sound like auto-tune because his intonation is so good. I don't want that. I want the clip that's better. Let's do Antonio Roberto Leal. Aquí. Okay. Okay, this is better.
Aprovecha que está llorando. Aprovecha y dile ahora a Antonio José todas las cosas que me has dicho a mí de él, hombre. Dale.
Ella se desliza y me atropella, aunque a veces no me importe. Sé que el día en que la pierda volveré a sufrir por ella, que aparece y que se esconde.
Is the pitches are very precise because that's what comes from that flamenco style. Like it's really interesting.
Que se marche, que se queda, que es pregunta y es respuesta, que es mi oscuridad, estrella.
Mi oscuridad. The pitches are very precise. But see, when he goes louder, it gets, well, it's partly because he's doing it for the style, but when you sing that loudly, it's harder to be precise with pitches. But he has the ability, his ear is there.
Ella me peina el alma y me la enreda, va conmigo pero no sé dónde va. Mi rival, mi compañera, que está tan dentro de mi vida y a la vez está tan fuera, y sé que volveré a perderme y la encontraré de nuevo y otra vez preguntaré mientras se va y no habrá respuesta. Y si esa que se aleja, la que estoy perdiendo, ay, y si esa era, y si fuera.
The pitches are precise. They are there. Listen to that again.
Si esa era, y si fuera ella, ella se hace fría y se hace eterna, un suspiro en la tormenta que tantas veces me cambió la voz. Gente que va y que viene y siempre es ella, que me miente y me lo niega, y que me olvida y me recuerda.
Me recuerda, that when he said recuerda, like you can hear it's like the pitches are like really, it almost sounds like auto-tune on his voice.
Ay, pero si mi boca se equivoca, y pero si mi boca y se equivoca, Roberto, y al llamarla nombre otra, a veces siente compasión por este loco, ciego y loco corazón. Sea lo que quiera Dios que sea, Miguelito.
It's very good.
Es la torpeza de ignorar.
La torpeza. The way he bends the pitches on that torpeza is really, really, really good. The fact that he can have that same type of pitch accuracy even while being in a louder, full voice, that's when you know you really have a special control over your voice.
Y va quemando, va quemando, va quemando, va quemando, va quemando, va y me quema.
Voy a parar el coche para dar.
So let me see. What do you mean he needs more breath? In what sense? Let me see. While practicing trying different things, I once deliberately tried singing out of tune. I did something to my mind, Nasality. Okay, well, if it works for you, then keep going for it. But yeah, that's Antonio Jose, and he has a good voice and a good control over his voice. But that's what you have to practice to do over time. That you practice, and when you first get a coordination, you're not going to have full control over it, and you don't worry about. Excuse me. You're not going to worry about all these little fine nuances is because it's outside of your reach. But over time, you keep working to develop to see, okay, can I get that more precise? Can I get my intonation here a little bit more tight? Can I get my rhythm here a little bit more tight while still staying in full voice? Okay, yes, I may be able to have a good intonation if I'm in a light head voice, but I need to learn that same thing even when I'm in my full voice. I need to do that for everything. So he sounds like he's trying a little. I'm not exactly sure what you mean in what sense. Like, to me, the way it comes across to me is he's just having fun in the car. You know, it's a very casual, laid-back thing in the car, something spontaneous that he decided to make him sing. And and they were just having fun with it. Everything he did there was fine. I mean, with that considered, I mean, were there a few things that he could do a little bit better, a little bit more cleaned up? Yeah, but that takes away from the spontaneous nature of it all. That spontaneous spur of the moment expression. So in my opinion, there's a balance between perfection and a balance between actually communicating something to people, actually being interesting, actually, let's say, bringing some soul or liveliness to a song. That you don't want to be totally one or the other. If you go solely the soul direction, then you tend to sing out of tune a lot. You tend to get behind the beat a lot. You can tend to lose your voice because you're all emotion and no kind of refinement. On the other hand, if you get so about perfection, you can end up sounding like a robot when you sing that every single pitch would be perfect and every single beat was right in time and everything, but you don't sound like a human being singing anymore. You sound like a robot. You sound like something lifeless that's not communicating something to people. In my opinion, he has a nice balance between the two. So when you go a little bit more the soul direction, you're gonna do some things that are off, that are not exactly 100% dead on. So there's a degree of acceptability within there, and there's an individual balance that everyone has to learn. I think Whitney Houston was also one of those artists, those few artists out there that had a nice balance between those two extremes, that she could give you a little bit of both, but never stray too far to either side. Actually, I take that back. She did stray too far at times. At times, she strayed too far to let's call it the just being spontaneous, spur of the moment thing. Sometimes she did that and got herself in vocal trouble as a result of that. But for the most part, yeah, that's how I would describe it. All right. So before I go, is there any other clip that anyone wanted to? I'm trying to think if there's one more thing I wanted to point out from one. It was another clip I wanted to show. I'm trying to think if I can show someone else that has a really good intonation. Who's another singer with really good intonation? Intonation. I'm drawing a blank right now. I know a lot of these singers, but I'm like, right now, I can't think of them on the spot. All I ask. Okay, let's look at that. Adele, all I ask. Now, before I even talk about this clip, I want to preface it because I want to say that. What is that? I want to preface it by saying that I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Adele, and I like her from the perspective that the way she communicates music. Like I said, I'm more about communicating something with music, like high notes and all that stuff. I mean, they're nice, but they don't really impress me. I'm more about showing a real message, and I think that is one of Adele's strengths. Now, she does have her vocal problems, but that is one of her strengths, and I think she tends to cater towards that. But we're going to see how she does on this song. I don't know what she's going to do with this one. It might challenge her a bit. We'll see. I love her tone. I love that tone.
My heart at the door.
And I like how she contrasts that with my heart. So I believe you have this kind of huskiness. My heart, and then you get this more clear kind of biting sound after it, and it makes a nice contrast. And I just love stuff like that.
I won't say a word. They've all been said before, you know. So
Listen to that phrasing. They've all been said. And I'm not exactly sure how she did it. Let me see.
they've all been said before, you know.
The way she did the timing of that and kind of paused on the consonants and everything, that's phrasing. That's what you listen for in an artist. That's musicianship.
So why don't we just play pretend, like we're not scared of what is coming next, or scared of having nothing left. Look, don't get me wrong, I know there is no tomorrow.
There is no now she's getting like that with her voice. Instead of going no, she needs to go no. That oh is what she needs to be. So this is how getting the vowel off can affect your stability on a pitch as well as your intonation. The intonation on those notes would be even more dead on if she got the vowel right. That's if. That's too if. It needs to be if. That's too last. It should be last instead of last. She's too bright on all of these notes. She's not. It's not bad. So when I mentioned earlier that everyone needs to develop their middle voice and have a very strong middle range, this is what a strong middle range sounds like. It's still imbalanced. it's only a stage that you go through. If you stay at this stage, you will have problems. You have to keep developing the voice beyond that, because she's still and ah. It's too much. It's coming off from here, and it needs to be more like ah, where the vowels are a little bit more like ah, a little bit more like that, and that will bring more ease to her throat and just allow her to coordinate the voice in a more consistent way that's also safer for her vocally long term. So that hand wow, it should be hand wow, it should be like that.
I don't need your honesty. It's already in your eyes, and I'm sure my eyes, they speak for me. No one knows
Interesting melodic
me
line.
like you do. And since you're the only one that's mattered, tell me, who do I run to?
She needs to watch out on all of those ooh vowels. Those ooh vowels are not done correctly.
Don't get me wrong, I know there is no tomorrow.
She's singing too bright.
All I ask is this.
But that is, I like the way that comes in like that. That is such a clever line. That all I ask is if that's such an interesting melodic progression. Bruno Mars, I think Bruno Mars is the one that wrote this song, right? Well, if he did, he did a very good job. I don't know if he crafted that line on his own, or if that's something that she came up with for that specific line, but I like that. That's good. That's good song composition.
This is my last night with you.
Again, she's too bright. You, that puts too much pressure
Hold
here.
me like I'm more than just a friend.
Too open, too bright.
Give me a memory I can use. Take me by the hand while we do what lovers do. It matters how this ends. 'Cause what if I never love again? Let this be our lesson in love. Let this be the way we remember us. I don't want it to be cruel. Oh, wish
That line was so nice. I gotta hear that again. That was really nice. Wait, where'd it go?
us. I don't want it to be cruel. Oh, wish
That is a nice line.
And I ain't asking for forgiveness. All I ask is if this is my last
Too
night
bright, too
with you.
To you.
Hold me like I'm more than just your friend.
That's why she can't hit the pitch now.
Give me a
Too open.
memory that I can use. Take me by the hand while we do what lovers do. It matters how this ends.
Oh, I like the way she did that. That was nice.
'Cause what if I never love again?
Okay, so, as a performance, looking at it, if you look at that solely as from the standpoint of a performance, from the perspective of someone in the audience, that was very good. That was a great performance. If you look at it from the perspective of her vocal health and what allows her to control her voice well and what's going to give her vocal longevity so she can continue to do all of her shows and be able to keep up with them, she had a lot of problems there. She sings way too she's too like, this is my life. She's way too open and too bright. If you sing that bright, that high in your middle range, you're gonna have problems. You do need to develop that baseline strength, but it should be like, this is our last, whatever, last goodbye. Instead of last good, you don't do that. Now, as you continue to develop your voice and get used to closing your vowels correctly, your throat starts to take on a different shape. And then after you do that, then you can start to open the vowels back up again, and they hold in place in a much more balanced way compared to what she's doing. So, yeah, that's what I would say about her. But she's good. It was a good performance. She has a lot of character and personality when she sings, and that is something that's, in my opinion, that's very important. But she has to watch out for those technical things, because that's part of what got her into vocal trouble in the first place. She had these habits for a long time. It's just that when you're not performing as frequently, you get away with them in the sense that they create their damage. And then maybe if you have a couple days before you have to sing again, it gives your voice time to heal up some. Then you go back and do the same thing again and damage it again. And then it heals up a couple days, and you just kind of stay in that process. But when you have to start touring and performing more regularly, you don't get that healing time. And so it's either you can't perform as much or you get to the bottom of your technique problems. Well, that's what I think she really needs to do. So, yes, Kiki Wyatt does have great intonation. She has a crazy voice also. Listen alone. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to close out of this. Where did it go? How do I do this? 1 second here. I'm just trying to get this out the way. I'm going to do this. There we go. Got rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Okay, cool. So, yeah, anyway, I hope all of that was helpful. That's just how I tend to think about music and how to approach things when it comes to voice and technique and so on and so forth. One final point I wanted to make earlier is that sometimes when you have singers that are giving you advice on your voice, in a lot of cases, they don't have the vocabulary in order to be able to communicate what it is that they're trying to say. And in a lot of cases, that can serve as a bottleneck for you in terms of trying to interpret what they're saying, because more than likely you're just going to misinterpret what they're saying. Like, so for instance, a lot of times I see people saying things like, well, you're out of tune. And I'm listening and I'm like, okay, yeah, the singer is out of tune, but sometimes there's an underlying reason that the singer is out of tune. Maybe they're out of tune because they just haven't worked on their ear enough. Maybe they're out of tune because they're singing the wrong vowel for that pitch. Maybe they're out of tune because they are singing too softly, or it could be any number of things, or even singing too loudly, or just whatever. It could be a number of reasons for which that gets started, but you reading that as a singer, you don't know how to interpret that correctly. So then you start focusing on something that's not going to get you from point A to point B. You start obsessing about your pitch. And then you try to work on it more and more and more, and you hear it's not getting in tune, and you're going, what's wrong with me? Why is my voice not working? And then you just start going crazy about it. Whereas if you got to the true source of it, then it would get resolved. So like I said, just be very careful when you're taking advice from people online or even face to face, but especially online. Like, unless it's coming from a teacher that's used to dealing with people at varying levels of expertise in their voice, from like people who have no development in their voice whatsoever, to people who are professionals. Unless it's a person that's used to dealing with that type of crowd, I would hesitate to take their advice. That they may have good advice, they may not have good advice, but just take it with a grain of salt and just try one thing, stick with it for a while. If that gives you results, then great. If it doesn't give you results, then and only then you try something else or look for a different opinion. But you have to give it an honest attempt, like at least a good 6 to 8 weeks before you start trying other things. So anyway, hope that was helpful for you all. It's time for me to eat now. I know it's like late here. It's like almost midnight, but I'm hungry, so I need to eat. Have a good night or a good day, depending on where you are located at in the world, and I'll talk again later. Bye-bye.